Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Pumpkin Seed Spread. That's right, each year the great pumpkin rises out of the pumpkin patch he thinks is most sincere, with presents for all the children of the world. Or at least that's what they told us. Turns out that wasn't true. So to help make up for that, I'm going to show you an incredibly delicious spread made from pumpkin seeds. And quite often at this point I'd tell you how easy it is, but with this there's actually a little bit of prep involved. Although when you taste the final results, totally worth it. So let's go ahead and get started with the first thing we need to get ready, and that would be our garlic oil. So what we're going to do first is toss some garlic cloves in a cold dry pan, and I did about 7 or 8 cloves. The small ones I halved and the big ones I quartered. And then to that we're going to add some vegetable oil and set our heat to low, at which point we're going to try to accomplish 2 things. We're going to infuse this oil with the garlic flavor, while softening those pieces of garlic without browning them. Okay, so we want to adjust our heat somewhere near low so we get just little tiny bubbles coming out of those cloves. And then other than giving it a stir once in a while, all we'll do is cook this for about 8 to 10 minutes, or until those pieces of garlic just start to soften. And I'll be testing mine with my freakishly small wooden spoon. And what we'll do as soon as we feel those starting to get tender is simply turn off the heat and let them cool in the oil. So a pretty simple step, just try not to brown the garlic. And then once that's set, we'll move on to the second thing we need to prep, and that would be toasting our beautiful green pumpkin seeds, which by the way are raw shelled pumpkin seeds. Okay, if you try to make this dip with the ones with the shells on, it's not going to come out good. But anyway, what we'll do is add those to a cold dry pan, and we will toast these, stirring or tossing pretty much constantly, until our seeds are hot and fragrant. Okay, so we don't really want to toast these all the way golden brown. We want them to stay nice and green, but they should get very hot to the touch. And you should definitely get the fragrance of, well, toasted pumpkin seeds. So hopefully your nose knows when you've gone far enough. But if you have a cold and are stuffed up, you can always feel them and taste them. And once they do get to the point where they're smelling, looking, and feeling good, we'll simply turn off the heat and set those aside while we move on to the third thing we need to prep. And that would be our lightly charred onions and peppers. And for that, we'll get a little bit of vegetable oil nice and hot over high heat, to which we will add some diced onion, as well as some fairly finely diced serrano pepper, or jalapeno or any other hot pepper. And what we'll do is cook that over high heat until the edges start to brown and almost char. Hey, maybe a couple of smaller pieces even do char, but that's fine, because we do want those onions and peppers to take on a little bit of sweet smokiness. So we'll cook those stirring until they look something like this, at which point we're going to dump in some apple juice. It could be flat, it could be sparkling, it doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is pour that in, reduce our heat to medium, and cook it until that liquid reduces just about all the way. Okay, pretty much down to a syrup. So keep an eye on this. Don't go anywhere. If you go and try to do something for a minute, the chances of this burning are roughly 100%. So just stand there observing until our juice is pretty much reduced all the way, at which point we'll turn off the heat because we're done. And by the way, if you think you've gone too far, just sprinkle in a couple teaspoons of water. You'll be fine. That's just you cooking. And once that's set, we can move to the food processor to bring all these components together, plus other components. So let's go ahead and dump in our seeds, followed by 1 bunch of freshly picked cilantro leaves. Oh, and by the way, don't waste time trying to pick out all those little stems attached to the leaves. Those taste exactly the same, so no need. And then we'll go ahead and add our onion mixture, making sure we use a spatula to scrape in every drop of that goodness. And then the same goes for our softened garlic and oil. We'll go ahead and add that, making sure we get every precious drop. And then after that, to balance all this richness, we'll go ahead and add some freshly squeezed lime juice. And yes, I'm pretty sure lemon would also work, but I went with lime in keeping with the green theme. And then last but not least, we will finish this off with some salt, in a decent amount. And fair warning, we'll probably have to adjust with some more of that later. And at this point, we can pop on the lid and pulse this on and off, and process it until it becomes sort of a coarse paste. And as usual with this kind of thing, we will occasionally want to stop and scrape everything down with a spatula, so we don't have any rogue cilantro leaves or seeds that avoid being processed. You know, sort of like that one seed stuck to the side now that's mocking me. But anyway, we'll continue on until this comes together, like I said, into a coarse paste, at which point we're going to stop and take a look, which is probably definitely going to be too thick. So what we'll do is keep adding liquid and processing until it's exactly the texture we want. And I'm going to use more apple juice, but you could certainly just use water if you're happy with the flavor profile. But anyway, I tossed in some more juice and gave it a scrape down, and continued processing, at which point I gave it another examination, and it was getting pretty close to what I wanted, which was sort of a hummus texture, which, by the way, would make for a pretty cool name for this. I ended up going with spread because hummus sounds a little more savory, and this is sort of in that gray area between sweet and savory. But anyway, the point is I checked it out and decided to need a little more juice. And as I mentioned, we'll just continue this process until we're totally happy with how it looks, which for me was something about like this. And of course, we can do some final adjustments before we serve, so just get it close. And what we'll do at this point is transfer it to a bowl, because what I suggest doing is covering this with plastic and refrigerating it until it's chilled before we serve. And this would probably be okay like this, but not only do I want to cool this down, I also want to give all those flavors time to meld together. Besides, if you're doing this for a party, you have other things to do. So I went ahead and covered that up and popped it in the fridge for a few hours, at which point we'll pull it out and give it a taste, and we'll do a final adjustment for seasoning and texture. So I decided mine needed a little more salt and a shake of cayenne. Plus, I also decided I wanted a little more acidity, but at the same time, I didn't want any more lime flavor. So I decided to go with apple cider vinegar, which accomplished exactly what I wanted, without throwing off the balance of the flavors. It also lightened up the texture just a touch. So I went ahead and stirred that in, and gave it one final taste, at which point I deemed it perfect, and transferred it into a serving dish. And then just because it's green, and the service has kind of a coarse texture, I decided to take a teaspoon and give it some swishes. People seem to like swishes. And then I finished off monochromatically by sprinkling some pumpkin seeds over the top. And by the way, if you wanted something a little more colorful, some pomegranate seeds would probably work here. But of course, final garnishes are up to you. You are, after all, the lioness of your pumpkin seed spreads flyness. But regardless of what you use, once done, we'll put this next to some crackers. And that, my friends, at least I think, is an amazing seasonal spread. It's just a little bit sweet and a whole lot of savory and very, very addictive. Which is fine, because I think relative to most party spreads, this one is very nutritious and pretty good for you. And maybe it's just me, but for sort of a drab green, I find this absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, that's it. While unfortunately it's true there is no such thing as a great pumpkin, there is definitely such a thing as a great pumpkin seed spread. So whether you do this for a Halloween party, or just any time you want a delicious snack, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.